All right, bro, I got you. Lock in. I'm going to give you tips you're not going to hear anywhere else. You'll absolutely crush your behavioral interview. Watch to the end. There's at least going to be 10 actionable tips in here. Yeah, the first one, basics, you probably already know this. Follow the STAR method. Make sure that you highlight an impactful result. You can also frame that result in a way that's meaningful to the recipient company. So if you're coming from a small company and you're interviewing at Fang, don't tell them that you improved revenue by $1,000 a month. They don't care. Frame it in terms of a percentage. So if you improved revenue even by 1% a month, that means a lot more at Fang, and it's going to sound better to them. Write your STAR method anecdotes down. Write them down and practice speaking them. Practice saying them. Mind the cadence of your speech and practice saying them with a smile. Your delivery on these stories is going to speak volumes as much as the content of the story itself. When you get a behavioral question, don't be too hasty to answer. Pause, take a breath, make it seem as though you're filtering in your mind through a vast repertoire of potentially relevant experience and finding that project that best matches to the question being asked. Then thank the interviewer for the question with a smile. Start by introducing the context at the quarter, then the employer, then the associated team and business details. Say something like the following. Thanks for the question. I think for that question, the experience that matches best would be from Q2 in 2022 when I was working at Capital One. Now you're going to practice your storytelling. Make it engaging. Make them understand the pain point that you were dealing with. You may have done something simple. Maybe you just improved a test. Maybe you just improved a CI/CD pipeline. But when you tell the story, emphasize how this was painful to other individuals at the company, to the business, and highlight how you actually had to struggle and make it into a hero story, that you made this accomplishment. Even if at the end of the story you did something small, drive home the value beyond just the metric result. Drive it home in a narrative sense. This is why it felt like an accomplishment. Add a second R after the result for reflection. The result is the thing which occurred, the metric which occurred. The reflection is, given where you are today, with the benefit of hindsight, what might you have done differently to have an even better result or a quicker result? So use the STAR method and add an R for reflection at the end. When you reflect on what you would do differently, make sure that you are leveraging signals that target the destination job level. So if you're applying for a staff level role, review the summary. You have an interview tomorrow, so just review the summary of The Staff Engineer, the book from Will Larson, and speak to how you match to those archetypes. There's a few archetypes, you could match to any of them, but highlight maybe your leadership skill, delegation, influence, if you're going for the TLM type of archetype. Or if you're going for the dive deep, a technical subject matter expert archetype, make sure that you highlight the added experience that you have in that niche and how that might have helped you do things even faster. Make these relevant to the target company and role. So if you have experience at a fintech, if you're interviewing at a fintech, make sure you highlight that over and above the result. The next tip is to make sure that your delivery and storytelling are on point. How do you do this? You do this by rehearsing the story. When you get the interview question, this should not be the first time that you've told the story. So prepare ahead of time. Do this tonight. Write down 5 to 10 of these stories that you have. Then practice verbally out loud, even if no one's around, speaking them, controlling the cadence of your speech, timing it. So you would like to have a time somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes and then allow for follow-up questions inside of that 30-minute window is going to be a typical practice here. When you write it down, you can write out the S, T, A, and R, and then under the task and action, emphasize how this is an important pain point and you're the hero in this story. In the meta interview guidance, they will use the SOAR method and they'll use the letter O, obstacle, and you really want to focus on that obstacle around the task. You took a task in response to some obstacle, and highlighting why this was a difficult obstacle is part of that storytelling. So you can kind of merge the STAR and SOAR method in this way. Very last tip, thank, and thank again. So when you write it down, practice it, and leave time for follow-up questions, your interviewer should ask follow-up questions and thank them for these as well. Throughout the delivery of any of your answers, whether follow-up or not, never admit mistakes. If you misspeak, and if they call you on it, don't apologize for misspeaking. Use thankfulness over apologetic. So thank them for the correction. Oh, thanks, good catch. That's a great point. If they disagree, you can consider what they have to say. Don't apologize for the decision you made in the past. If you're presented with new information, which might yield an even better result, thank them for their perspective. That's a great perspective. Now that I consider that, I might do this other thing. That doesn't mean that you're apologizing. So when the interviewer goes to their calibration meeting to reflect on how you performed, you want them to remember somebody who listened, was an active listener, was thankful, was smiling, was positive, not someone who was apologetic. Someone who's apologetic sounds like, for right or wrong, in the ears of the interviewer, it sounds like someone who is wrong a lot. And we don't want to hire someone who is wrong a lot. So be someone who is positive and thankful, not someone who is apologetic. One more bonus tip. This won't work for you if you have the interview tomorrow, but in general, delivery in the context of a practice or mock interview is going to be more valuable than speaking out loud in an empty room. But speaking out loud in an empty room is much better than an internal monologue or just writing down the answers without verbal practice. So the verbal practice is key. Part of the reason that a mock interview is going to be useful is because it will help you anticipate follow-up questions. You can do this exercise with yourself, and you can also use a language model like Claude or ChatGPT and ask the language model to offer you a behavioral question. You can type out your answer, and then you can ask the language model to give you follow-up questions. You can do that with your own reflection to anticipate some follow-up questions. That way you'll not only be snappy on your initial solution, but you'll also be snappy with the follow-up questions. That's okay if you don't have time to do this by tomorrow. Better than your own reflection, better than shadow interviewing with the language model would be a real mock interview. I like to use interviewing.io. So that's a bonus tip that you may or may not be able to leverage this time around, but it should help you throughout your career. Hope this helped. Follow for more.